Logan had always thought he knew what marriage was supposed to be. 8 years together, 2 kids, and countless moments he thought were built on love and respect. But that afternoon, everything changed in a single, almost casual sentence. He had just returned from work, tired from a long day of meetings and site visits, and walked into the living room where his wife, Vanessa, was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up at him, a faint smirk curling on her lips, and said the words that would freeze him in place. "Honestly, Logan, I'd trade you for that guy." At first he thought he misheard. Maybe the exhaustion had made him imagine it. But the way she said it, without hesitation, without a flicker of guilt, made it clear she meant every word. Logan felt the room spin for a second. His heart pounded, but not in the way fear usually made it. This was different. This was betrayal laid bare, raw and unapologetic. He didn't yell. He didn't storm out. He didn't demand an explanation. He simply nodded, a single, slow nod, like a man who had just received undeniable proof of something he had suspected, but never fully allowed himself to believe. And then he walked past her, his mind already processing the next steps. Because Logan wasn't going to react like the desperate husband she expected. He had spent years being patient, being kind, always trying to keep the family together, always putting her first. But this statement, was a line drawn in the sand. It wasn't just disrespect. It was a declaration that the person he loved had already chosen someone else in her heart, someone he had never met. As he moved quietly through the house, he remembered the early days. The laughter, the shared dreams, the long nights talking about their future. Vanessa had been vibrant, full of life, the kind of woman who made him feel alive. But somewhere along the way, that spark had dimmed. The conversations had become shorter. The affection less frequent. The smiles practiced rather than genuine. Logan realized that this wasn't sudden. It had been a slow erosion, and now the truth was unavoidable. And while the pain cut deep, a strange clarity came with it. This wasn't just about her words. It was about control, about knowing the reality of his marriage, and about deciding that from this moment forward, he would act on his own terms, not hers, not anyone else's. Over the next few days, Logan watched carefully, though he never let Vanessa know he was paying such close attention. He noticed the small things, the lingering glances at her phone, the subtle smiles when reading messages, the extra time she spent on her appearance before leaving the house. At first, he tried to convince himself it was normal, that he was imagining patterns where there were none. But deep down he knew better. One evening, he followed her subtle routines in his mind, piecing together a timeline of her interactions. Vanessa's friends had become more central to her life, and he noticed the way she laughed with one in particular, Mark, a co-worker he had met only a handful of times. There was a light in her eyes, a warmth he hadn't seen in years, directed at someone who wasn't him. Logan felt the sting of betrayal. Yet he kept his composure. No shouting, no confrontations, no dramatic scenes. He knew she expected a reaction. She wanted him to beg, to plead, to act desperate. Instead, Logan planned his approach carefully. He started securing his personal accounts, his finances, and sensitive information. He quietly cataloged evidence of her behaviors, not for revenge in the moment, but to understand the full scope of the situation. This wasn't about making a scene. It was about clarity and control. Meanwhile, he maintained his role as the husband everyone else saw, the supportive, calm, attentive partner. He attended to family obligations, helped with chores, and even complimented her on small things she would have assumed went unnoticed. But every smile he gave, every nod of agreement, was calculated. Logan had become an observer in his own life, watching not only Vanessa but himself. How he could remain strong, dignified, and patient even when everything inside him screamed to explode. Then came the night that would change everything. Vanessa received a text from Mark while Logan sat quietly in the next room, pretending to read. She giggled softly, leaned closer to the screen, and whispered something that made her cheeks flush. Logan didn't move. He didn't interrupt. He simply watched. And as the minutes passed, he realized that the betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was intentional. She had already chosen someone else, at least in her mind. And the audacity of her words that day wasn't a slip. It was an honest reflection of her feelings. Logan's chest tightened, but he felt no panic. Instead, there was focus, a clarity that sharpened with every observation. He knew exactly what he would do next, but it would be on his terms, calculated and deliberate. Vanessa might have believed she controlled the narrative, but Logan was preparing to reclaim it in a way she could never anticipate. The following week, Logan's patience and careful observation paid off. He discovered undeniable evidence of Vanessa's emotional attachment to Mark. Subtle at first, text messages she quickly deleted, whispered phone calls she thought were private. But piece by piece, the truth became crystal clear. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was tangible, undeniable, and staring him in the face. He didn't confront her immediately. Logan had learned that anger and impulsive reactions only gave the other person the upper hand. Instead, he continued his careful routine, attending to family responsibilities, keeping the household running smoothly, all while documenting everything. He felt the tension inside him shift. Where there had once been disbelief and hurt, now there was resolve. He wasn't just a husband discovering infidelity. He was a man reclaiming control over his own life. One evening, Vanessa invited Mark over under the guise of a casual meeting. Logan, unseen and unnoticed, observed the interaction through the evidence he had collected. Her gestures, the softness in her voice, the way she leaned in slightly, it was all there, unguarded, unfiltered. Logan didn't intervene, didn't make a scene. He let the footage, the recordings, and the undeniable proof speak for themselves. What shocked him most wasn't the betrayal. It was how clear and methodical it had been. Vanessa had no idea that every subtle move, every hidden smile, every whispered word was being recorded, and it gave Logan a strange sense of empowerment. For years he had felt helpless, blindsided by small lies and fading affection. Now he finally understood the full story. In the quiet of that night, Logan made his decision. This wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. There would be no shouting, no humiliation, no public spectacle. Instead, it was about reclaiming dignity and taking control. He would confront Vanessa, but only when he had everything laid bare, when the truth could no longer be ignored or denied. He would do it calmly, strategically, and with precision. For the first time in months, Logan slept with a sense of purpose. The anxiety, the uncertainty, the sleepless nights, they began to lift. He wasn't broken. He wasn't powerless. He was ready. And when the moment finally came, when Vanessa realized that he had seen everything and had taken the reins of his own life, the shock would be hers.